here. Okay, Yarrow is here. Where did your request go? There we go. Okay. Let's see if we can get this to stay up. Hello. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm trying to just get my phone to stay up. Okay. You guys will just get a nice view of my head. All right. Hello. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Tea Live. So happy you're here.
Thank you. I'm so happy I'm here too.
Yay. Did you bring some tea?
I brought some tea.
Yay. Cheers. What kind of tea are you drinking?
Matcha with marine collagen, reishi, and cacao.
Oh, delicious. I got my Paleo Valley turmeric mushroom concoction. It's delicious.
I love it.
Yay. All right. Shall I lead us through some grounding and then we'll dive into this very exciting topic?
Absolutely. The topic that's going to trigger everybody.
Yes. We're ready. The two fifth lines are ready. Okay. So everyone sit up nice and tall. Get out any last minute wiggles that your body's needing. And settling into some stillness, closing off the eyes if you're comfortable. And just taking a big deep breath in and slowly release. And just noticing how your breath is feeling in this present moment. Noticing if the breath is feeling shallow or deep and beginning to deepen the breath with each inhale and exhale. Noticing any thoughts coming up. Noticing any sounds or distractions in your environment, and then returning your focus to your breath. And then bringing your awareness into your body, noticing any body sensations, any areas of tension or tightness, and doing a quick body scan, relaxing your brow line, your jaw, your shoulders, your heart, your chest, your abdomen, the base of your spine. Noticing any tension in your legs or toes or fingers or arms. And sending an intentional breath into any part of the body that needs it most. And noticing any emotions, any stuck, stored, old, or stagnant emotion that needs to come to the surface, or any new or raw emotion, just allowing space for any and all feelings to come to the surface, knowing you are safe to feel however you're feeling in each present moment. And then noticing any resistance, any urge for the mind to pull you out of the body with thoughts, distractions, rumination. And gently deepening the breath to get back into your body, showing your nervous system it's safe to just be here in this present moment, to allow everything to soften and slow down. And then just taking a few moments to notice what it feels like to be in stillness. Continuing to use your breath as your anchor, just noticing if it feels challenging, if your body wants to move or fidget away, or maybe it feels nourishing or easeful, just noticing how it feels and continuing to deepen your breath into some moments of stillness. Now together, let's take 3 long deep breaths. You can place your hands on your heart, your abdomen, or your lap, whatever feels best for you. And starting with the first inhale, we're going to breathe all the way into the belly, sending the breath from the belly to your chest, to the top of your head. Holding for a moment at the top, and then slowly exhaling out of your mouth. Releasing any stagnant air out of the lungs. And again, breathing all the way in. Holding at the top, and slowly release. And one more, breathing all the way in, holding at the top, and slowly release. And just allowing your breath to return back to its natural rhythm, noticing if anything has softened or shifted, or if anything new has shown up. Knowing you always have your breath to come home to. And whenever you're ready, you can start to take any small organic movement as we start to gently wake the body up, bringing ourselves back to this present moment. So maybe some neck rolls or some side stretches or anything else that your body needs. And whenever you're ready, you can come back. All right. How did that feel?
Felt good.
Good. Yay. Okay. So, let's see. For those from my page that may not know you, although I feel like most people on my page know you, but just in case, you want to do a little intro and then we'll dive in?
Yes, I am Yarrow Kae, leadership and nervous system mentor, spiritual teacher, and clinically trained therapist. And I am the creator of the Yarrow Kae Academy, Healing, Expanding, Spiritually Transforming, and Energetic Sorcery. So I created the Yarrow Kae Way, which is a healing method that sets you free. It is what I have taught Rachel. She has now uses it and has made it her own. And I was actually speaking to my own business mentor this morning as we're always refining how to explain this, because what we do is subtle and profound. And a lot of times people don't understand, what do you actually mean? It's inner child work, it's trauma healing.
Right.
Sure, it's those, but on such a deeper level that actually creates spiritual transformation. And as Rachel always says so beautifully, you never actually know what it feels like until you feel it, because we just don't know this level of freedom. It's normalized in our society. And so what I was saying to her, and this is, there's a reason I'm going into this, is that I can teach you how to do this and then it becomes yours, because it's so much about the person who's doing it and what their energetic vibration is and who is drawn to that person. And I think that's really important, right? Because it's like, we're creating freedom for you. And so much of that is the vessel through which you're receiving and attuning to who you're attuning to and how you're receiving that freedom. And it will be based on which energetic vibration you are attracted to.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's such a beautiful way of explaining it, because I think people then get confused of like, well, do I have to work with this one person to receive this? And it's like you said, you teach us so that we can then spread it to the world, and then it becomes our own flavor and our own energetic vibration. And that's the whole point. So, yay. All right. So where do we begin with this topic? So I guess I'll share just maybe a little bit of the inspiration behind this is something attaching on to symptoms and diagnoses. This is something that Yarrow and I talk a lot about in our work together, especially because before meeting her, I came from the therapy world where I was diagnosing people. I didn't like diagnosing people. It never felt resonant for me in my being. And then when I did this work with Yarrow, I realized how often we attach on to those symptoms just in my own healing journey, and then also witnessing it with my clients and just the world in general. And so this kept coming up as a topic. And then we were like, okay, we should do a live about this, because I think every single human on this earth attaches to something without even realizing it. And so we're hoping to bring some of that unconscious to the conscious today, so you can start to look at how you are relating to your symptoms and actually allowing yourself to shift rather than staying stuck in them.
Yeah, just to start this off, I really want to look at, okay, so let's just say it's anxiety. Like I had anxiety and I had OCD, and I was really convinced that I was going to heal it holistically, which I did. Now, if I had taken that anxiety, so I'm going to just show two ways of relating to this. I'd taken that anxiety. I was not diagnosed with it because I grew up off the grid and I was like, I will heal this myself. I knew it was anxiety. I knew what I had. I knew I had OCD. If I had taken that, gone to a psychiatrist, gotten prescribed meds, and then justified and validated all of my crazy ass behavior with, but I have anxiety. You're attaching to the symptom. You're attaching to it. So why would one want to attach to a symptom like that? Well, it validates your behavior and allows you to avoid the shame you feel about the behavior And then you feel like, okay, I'm okay because I know I have anxiety, but it doesn't ask you to actually shift. So you're like attaching to the symptom. Whereas what I did is I was like, oh, I have anxiety. This doesn't have to define me. This is coming from somewhere. I need to heal it. And it wasn't like I'm wrong because I have anxiety. It was a full acceptance of I have anxiety and I have OCD. I didn't shame myself for it. I was open about it with my friends. I was someone who was, once I was ready to leave, it took me another 45 minutes to get out of the house. All of my friends knew this. I wasn't hiding it, but I also wasn't going to get medicated for it. I was like, okay, this is pretty unreasonable and it is affecting my quality of life. And I would like to shift this. And I wasn't making myself wrong for it. I knew there was a reason. And so many times people make themselves wrong for their symptoms. Then they want to get justified and validated for their symptoms. Then they hold on to their symptoms when what we really want to do is be in full acceptance of the symptoms and allow them to shift.
Yeah.
The other thing people do is they'll be in denial of their symptoms, which creates resistance, right? So then whenever you're in resistance to something, you're perpetuating it because you're denying that they exist.
Yes, 1,000%. I'm trying to think like how because before finding you, I was never like officially diagnosed with anything. So I'm just thinking about my own version of this, of like,
So you normalized your anxiety.
yes, I normalize anxiety. Sickness was my other big one. So like anxiety, sickness, external validation,
Anxious attachment.
anxious
You
attachment.
normalized all of it. This is
Right.
just how I am.
Right.
This is just how I am, which is another avoidance of shame because it's like, well, it's like a false acceptance, right? It's like, well, I'm accepting this is how I am. I'm accepting I'm a hot mess, but I'm unwilling to do anything about it.
Right. Right. It's like, it's truly like you don't even know there's another way of being, right? Because this has been so normalized in society that what's normalized is like, okay, figure out your attachment style. But the conversation never goes beyond that of like, well, let's then heal your, your anxious attachment. It's more of like, oh, you have anxious attachment. Okay, now be aware of how this, you know, affects your relationships.
Well, even beyond that, we tell people that they need to be with partners who validate their anxious
Right.
attachment.
Right. It's like, oh, you have anxious attachment. Okay, then you need to be with this type of person to placate to that. So,
So that they can reassure you all the time and just communicate with your partner that you need that reassurance.
right.
I'm sorry, whoever's listening to this who doesn't like this, that's not okay.
Yeah, it's not helpful.
Place or a little boy place. You're placating to the anxious attachment rather than healing the anxious attachment. And Rachel and I can both tell you there will be nothing fun about healing the anxious attachment.
No.
You will feel like you want to die for quite some time until you're like, holy shit, I'm set free.
Yeah.
And I no longer need someone to validate me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, none of it's fun, but the whole point is it's worth it, or else we wouldn't be on here encouraging guys to to look at shifting it. But yeah, it's one of those things where all these things are so deeply ingrained in our society of just, well, I have anxiety or I have OCD or I have this. And it's never actually, we're not taught that we can heal these things. We're taught to take medication. We're taught to cope. Literally, as a therapist, my job was to teach people coping skills. I used to hand them a sheet that had 117 coping skills on it. And I would hand them these coping skills. And that's what I was trained to do. And now I look back at that and it's like cringe city. I'm like, what? Why was I taught to do that? That is so deeply sad that all of these people who go to therapy are just taught, oh yeah, you just have to cope. And it's like, we're never actually taught that we can fully shift these at a nervous system level, which means they don't even exist. Like those anxious thoughts that you're trying to medicate would not even exist if you healed the root of the anxiety.
Rachel sent me a reel last night of someone who is an anxious attachment coach, and she's helping women heal anxious attachment. And she gives these tips on what to do on a first date. And they're also rigid and also controlled, and they're not connected to your heart, to your soul, to your spirit, to your breath. So, what we're doing, y'all, is we're taking these symptoms, intellectualizing them, developing systems or coping skills to manage them, and we feel fucking stuck and unhappy and miserable and lacking life force and vitality. There's no freedom there. There's no life force. There's no joy. There's no connection. There's no like, I'm lit up energy. There is, okay, I'm going to go on this date and I'm going to make sure I don't share too much about myself. And then I'm going to make sure I end it within 2 hours. And then I'm going to make sure, and then I'm going to go home and I'm going to cheer in the mirror and be like, I'm such an empowered woman. You know what an empowered woman is? How do I feel right now? I don't feel right. He's not my person. How do I feel right now? Ooh, I feel like I want to lean in. I want to open up. Am I coming from a trauma response or am I genuinely being open and vulnerable? Because there's a difference between dumping your life story on someone and being open and vulnerable.
Yeah.
We teach you how to discern what is authentic, what is real, what is powerful, what is connected, not to control your life to a point that you feel like you are terrified to trust yourself.
Right. Exactly. It's like the whole point is not to go to these tools of like, if you're in this situation, do X to achieve Y, right? It's like and that's a lot of how, when I look at other attachment coaches, this is how it comes off of like, you have to do this if you want to feel this way. And that's again perpetuating a dependency outside of yourself and outsourcing your power, your safety, your own wisdom. Whereas this whole method is to guide you home to your innate wisdom, to actually help you feel safe, to feel your intuition, which, let me tell you, if you are not used to feeling what that feels like, the first times that you start to really feel your intuition of like, what is my body, what is my intuition communicating around this thing, this person, whatever it is, and using that as your GPS, that is your anchor, like it is the most empowering. That is empowering. That is like the most empowering feeling in the world. But when you have to be like, okay, well, my coach says to get home in 2 hours, but maybe you're having the most magical time. Like I told Yara last night, some of my most magical first dates were like 7 hours. And that's the thing. It's not about the time. It's about like, how are you feeling versus, this attachment to these external things that really all that is your brain trying to perceive as safety. Well, if I do this, then I'm going to be safe. And it's like, but that's not how that works. And it's perpetuating you outsourcing your safety rather than turning inward.
Yep. And we have so many mechanisms for this, and we validate it in society and normalize it. It's like, oh, well, it's okay. This is just me trying to work with my anxious attachment. I don't want you to have to work with it. I want you to be free from it. I want you to heal it. And it's not that it won't ever come up. It's that you'll go, oh, it's coming up. You won't project it onto the person outside of yourself. You'll be able to be with it within yourself. Like, I feel terrified. I'm scared of loss. I'm perceiving abandonment. Let me just be with it. You'll be able to discern what is right for you and what isn't right for you. Like, that self-trust. And honestly, sometimes you can't trust yourself. Rachel goes, there were points in time where it's like, she's like, I can't trust myself. And I'm like, okay, let me just get clear on your energy and what's actually going on here. And now Rachel can trust herself. I know she can trust herself. So it's not about you always needing to outsource it to me. It's when like when the bird is ready to fly, I will send you out into the world. Like, so like, oh, I no longer have the pressure of like discerning whether or not she can trust herself. Like, I know she can trust herself. We're not guided back to being able to trust ourselves. And we think there's something wrong with us. So we're like hunting for what it is. Do I have anxiety? Do I have OCD? Do I have ADHD? Now there's this new thing where everyone thinks they are on the spectrum for autism. Do I have like anxious attachment? Do I have avoidant attachment? Do I have disorganized attachment? Do I have narcissism? Do I have borderline? Do I have it's like we're just fucking hunting for the thing that's wrong with us.
Yeah.
When it's just, can you get still and be with yourself?
Yeah.
And honest about what's happening for you. And all of the symptoms are a representation of where you are dishonoring yourself, sacrificing yourself, abandoning yourself, and relating through attachment versus authenticity, and also where your nervous system doesn't feel safe to just be honest about you, where you're avoiding shame. We avoid shame all the time. We don't realize it. Like, our relationship with shame is so dysfunctional. We're like, I don't have shame about that. But no, that's not okay. Okay, well, you obviously have shame about it then. Like, there's shame underneath there. If you don't think it's okay, then there's shame if it's a thing that's occurring for you. So until we can come into full acceptance, and I talked about this in the portal this morning, until we can come to full acceptance of where we are right now in this moment, we can't make change. And what we do with these symptoms is we attach onto them and let them define us. And then we are inflexible around allowing them to shift, because those symptoms are just mechanisms to keep you safe. Literally, that's all they are. There's nothing more than that.
Right. Yeah, and that's I mean, you and I had uncovered that there were moments where I was really attaching on to an external validation because it can feel really scary to look at, well, who am I if I'm not the person with the validation wound? Who am I if I'm not the person that's chronically sick or anxious? And that's so much of what I'm working on with my Ladies in Authenticity Unleash of like, you are not any of those symptoms, like at all. Like your pure core soul's essence, like your most authentic spirit, like has nothing to do with anxiety, which, if you believe in past lives and you're connected to your soul, you understand that when we are in the 5D, we don't have those symptoms. Those are human symptoms. And so if you're able to connect to that core part of who you were, even as a child, before those layers of trauma and conditioning and attachment wounding started layering on, like that is who you are. You are not any of these things. And so it's really important to get honest of like, why are you attaching on? What feels safer about attaching on than to actually like believe that you can shift and heal something? Because so much of that is how we get our needs met, right? For me, being sick was the way that I got my needs met. And so who am I without being sick? Oh, I'm someone that actually is just safe to not need that much attention for being sick. And that's so much more enjoyable, like much more enjoyable way of living.
Yeah, and it's, when you say we have to look at why, so it's getting needs met, but it's also if I allow myself to let go of this sickness and become my most powerful self, who will I lose?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which you might lose some people.
You
And
might lose some people.
yeah, and that's the thing is we never sugarcoat it. It's never going to be like, oh yeah, but you can shift this and then you won't lose anyone. That's not actually true. I've lost a lot of people. Yara's lost a lot of people. And the thing is anyone that you are meant to lose on the journey to becoming your authentic self is part of that process. And so you can either choose to live your life in fear of who you're going to lose, or you get to face that worst fear. Like this past year, I faced all my fears of abandonment and loss and all the things. And now I'm like, oh, now I get to actually feel safe around that worst fear rather than that worst fear being the driving force of how I'm creating my life and how I'm living my life and how I'm feeling in my life. So if you do lose people because you are choosing not to attach on to sickness, brokenness, anxiety, trauma bonding, then you're just opening up space for alignment, like aligned opportunities, people, connections who want to grow and expand with you. And it gets better. Like it gets better and better and better, but you have to be willing to accept that not everyone is going to come with you in that, and know that you are safe to feel the pain of that, because of course there's pain that comes with that. We can't avoid pain. Pain is part of life.
Hmm. And when we're attaching on that way, and a lot of it's unconscious, and countless clients, I don't know why I'm doing this. Like and we're like, oh, there's something wrong with me, instead of looking at like, oh, I actually don't feel like situations I'm in life right now. And because I don't feel like I can be my most expansive self, I'm muting myself down and then attaching to all these symptoms. Because if I'm sick, then I don't actually have to look at what's really going on, and I can just be sick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just use my BPD as an example. Like, first of all, that was never actually diagnosed by a therapist. You were the one that uncovered it. And if you Google how to treat BPD, it will say go to the hospital or do like DBT or go to the hospital or get medication. Like those are your three options. And that's just one of many examples where if you Google symptoms, which I'm actually working with a client on her releasing that as her addictive behavior. She's a big Googler. So we're like, no more Googling. It's not actually helpful. Um, but when you do that with really anything, it's going to guide you in the same direction. Medication, talk therapy, like all the things. And again, this is part of society at large, not understanding that we actually get to heal, like fully heal these things, not cope with them, not manage them, not put a band-aid over them, like fully shift them to the point where they don't even exist, which is what
Yeah.
we've done around my BPD, where it's like, oh, that doesn't even have to exist. And if it does come back, I know what it is and I know how to move through it.
Yeah, and it's also not running around. This is another thing that Katie and I were discussing this morning. It's like not running around chasing all the things. Like,
Mhm.
it is so simple what we do. It's a continual guiding back to you. If you're running around being like, I do this mushroom journey or this plant medicine journey, I gotta go to this retreat in Costa Rica and do ecstatic dance. I gotta do this inner child healing and this trauma healing. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you don't need to do any of that actually.
You need
What you
to
need is
get
to feel
still.
safe enough to be guided back to you. It literally is the simplest thing, and it feels the most complicated because it's so simple, and it also will challenge you on the deepest levels because you're going to have to break apart your ego, what your self concept is, what you believe is possible, how you're getting your needs met. You're going to have to get honest about that, and usually it's through some sort of sickness or attention seeking behavior.
Yeah.
You're going to have to heal the relationship with those things. Get in touch with the deep pain of your inner child and allow yourself to be with that pain. Come into relationship with your shame. Like, look at all the darkest, rawest, grossest parts of you, which I know in many moments Rachel has said to me, how can I love these parts? And I'm like, we have to love these parts, because if you can't love these parts, you're going to be in resistance to them and they're going to keep asking to get their needs met. It's literally so simple. It is a full of acceptance of everything that is in this present moment, and then allowing yourself to shift from there.
Yeah.
Like, we can't be in resistance to things. We can't be in denial about things. We can't be dishonest about things. And like, Rachel and I had, I'm just laughing. We've had arguments because she's like, in group, there was one time a woman who was like saying the things she was supposed to say. And this is her thing, because she's very smart and she's a perfectionist. She'll always say the right thing. And so you're like, she's saying the right thing. I'm like, yeah, but her body doesn't feel it. And so
I'm like, you're invalidating her.
you're invalidating her. She was agreeing with you. I'm like, it doesn't matter that she was agreeing with me. Her body was not integrating it. And so you can feel energetically, like, especially the smartest, most self-aware people are like, well, I know I shouldn't have shame about this, but that doesn't mean you don't.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's not in your body. Or yeah, I know that I'm controlling, but are you shifting it? Like,
Right.
what's actually happening with it? Like, it's like knowing something and saying the right thing has actually nothing to do with what's actually shifting in your body. Because what's happening in those moments is there is some sort of energy lock. There's some sort of like attachment to the story, the perception, the belief, the symptom, the way of being in the world. And until you can unlock that attachment and then start to create the safety to shift the way you're relating, because that's a way of safety, and then show up differently, until you can do that, you're going to stay locked in that energy field, and it's going to keep you stuck in some capacity. And it could be super subtle. Like, you could be out in the world killing it, but there are these little things, little ways that you're bypassing, little ways that you're dismissing yourself, little ways that you're invalidating your own emotions and not allowing yourself to feel them. And that is going to create continual subtle disconnection. And then the universe will keep bringing you things like someone who cuts you off in traffic, someone who bumps into you, to get you to heal this. But you have to be conscious enough to recognize, oh, all of these things, even though they seem super micro, are coming into my life to help me heal whatever thing I'm avoiding.
Yeah, it is the micro, like that. The micro adds up, because again, we focus on these big labels and diagnoses and things and symptoms, and it's actually not even about that. It's like the micro day-to-day moments of how are you moving through your day in your, are you even in your body? I always say, most of my life, I don't even think I was in my body. I was so driven by fear. And what you said about the knowing, it's like the knowing then becomes a defense against the shame around even having the control, the perfectionism, the people pleasing, whatever the thing is. So that's how sneaky these things are. It's like they're all nuanced and layered. And at the same time, it is truly so simple. Like, we help you feel safe to feel your feelings. That's it. Like, literally
to be with yourself.
To be with yourself. Because
it's
if you
not just feel your feelings, because it's like you have to be with yourself. It's like,
right.
We can use that as bypass. Oh, I cried. Well, Rachel and I had to process how she had an addiction to crying.
I was addicted to crying. And then when I broke that addiction, I was like, wait, I haven't cried in like 2 weeks. Is everything okay? And she's like, yeah, it's okay. And now I really like, most of the time now I really cry just tears of gratitude. Like, I cry just moments of like, wow, what is life? This is so wild. Or like, if a client just sends me a nice healing win. But like, the amount of dysregulated crying that I would do pretty much on a daily, that was my norm. And I thought that was normal. I didn't realize that I could actually, I wasn't even aware enough to know that that was something that could be shifted. It just felt so normal.
Was that at the retreat that we talked about that? No, it was in Boxer the first time. What we talked about at the retreat was your inability to make eye contact, which is really important for people because this one is a thing that's coming up a lot. It's like people are like not able to make eye contact, and then they're finding these symptoms and reasons they can't. You can't make eye contact because it's scary to be seen.
Yeah.
Literally, that's bottom line.
It was, I think, both because when we had our one-on-one time at the retreat, it was that, yeah, I started crying and you were like, you don't actually need to be crying right now. And it was like out of habit, like, oh, it's time to cry. And you were like, no, everything's okay. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I don't need to cry. And then it was the probably once I started not being able to make eye contact, or like you would look at me and I would just like scurry away. And I would do that just in general, not even crying, but like even in our sessions, you would look at me and see me, which is a mirror for me seeing myself. And I would be like, da, 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 or I would laugh. I would move away from that because it felt so scared to actually be seen for me. And now, we have our VIP weekends where we eye gaze, and it's like I can do it so easily because I feel safe to be seen now. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so we share, Rachel and I share all this because we've been through it, and most people haven't. Most people will validate your symptoms. Like if you listen to our laugh live about the chicken, most people would have just been like, whatever, Rachel, it doesn't matter. Or they would have kept trying to convince her, but like you have to be able to open up what's actually going on and look at where there's not acceptance, where there's attachment, where there's some way you're getting your needs met, where you're like trying to find what's wrong, air quotes, with you, because if you there has to be something wrong with you. Oh, I'm sorry. It couldn't just be the fact that you're terrified to let yourself be as fucking amazing as you actually are. So you know what's going to happen when you're terrified to be as amazing as you actually are? You're going to implode, and your body's going to create sickness and dis-ease because you're going to feel frustrated. And so you're going to be like anxious and depressed and lacking vitality and lacking libido and triggered and reactive and like seeking, grasping external validation. Like if you're not honest with who you are as a person, your body is going to give you symptoms, and then we're going to diagnose them and think we need medication for them, which I just want to say this as a caveat. Sometimes I know medication's helpful. It's not meant to be a forever solution. It really is meant to be like a catalyst to get you to somewhere else. But we're so scared of letting go of the thing we think is keeping us well, instead of feeling safe to totally surrender to who we actually are as a soul, as a spirit, as a being, as a heart, as a human, and let ourselves be as fucking magical as we actually are.
Yeah. And I think the ironic part that we talk a lot about is that the whole fear, the worst case scenario is death, right? Always. But then it's like, we're going to die anyway. So then how do we actually want to feel while we're living? And what I've realized in all of this is that so much of the world is dead inside, like not fully living, not connected to what it feels like to be alive, like taking pills every day, numbing with TV, like the amount of hours. I literally had so many weekends where all I would do was sit in front of a TV screen. That's not living. That's numbing. That's running away from myself. Like it's all an avoidance of you. Whereas if you were to actually release the attachment to the symptoms, the labels, the quick fixes, and actually get still with yourself, which yes, we need that co-regulate. Like Yarrow said at the beginning, it's like we have to be in that co-regulation to feel safe to do that. And then when the bird is ready to fly from the nest, we fly, and it's amazing. And something we were reflecting on recently is once you get to that place, it just becomes about connection rather than the anxious attachment. And I have to share that with my clients all the time because they're like, well, I don't want to be anxiously attached to you. And it's like, you have to allow yourself to experience an attachment, a safe attachment figure, to get that reparative experience, with the goal being for you to learn how to come home to yourself and then fly, where then the relationship just becomes about connection and support and desire and expansion rather than I need you to survive, which is how I used to feel with Yarrow. I need you. And now I'm just like, oh, I am safe. Like it's just night and day, and it's just so worth it.
Yeah, and most of us, we don't realize that it really comes back to that relational healing, to surrendering to being held by another person and seen by another person fully, without hiding, without shutting down, without projecting on them, without avoiding them, like letting someone become that person who holds us and sees us.
Yeah.
Because if it's the right person, They will guide you back to you, and that sets you free.
Right.
But we think we have to do it alone, or we have to do these somatic practices every day, or we have to cope, or we have to take these meds. When in reality, we just need to be held and seen and called out on all the sneaky ways that we're avoiding ourselves. And that is what leads to spiritual transformation. Like, it's
Yeah.
actual spiritual transformation. It's not just healing to regulate in a world that's dysregulated. It's like, how can I set you the most free you could possibly be, to be fully in acceptance in every moment of what is happening in your life, and know that it's all happening for you, even in the most fucked up moments when you want to fight it,
Mhm.
and to know that you're going to get to the other side with ease, and you're going to transform, and it's going to be perfect and beautiful.
Yeah. Beautifully said. It is the best medicine to feel safe to surrender to a relationship that can just hold you and show you you are safe to be with all things. It doesn't mean that all things are going to feel easy or, enjoyable. Like, that's not life. And so anyone that's telling you, well, you can, just not feel bad anymore if you do these three things or take this pill, take your happy pills, like, you're missing out on life, because when we don't feel the depths of our pain, our shame, our fear, all the things, we're missing out on being able to feel the freedom and the bliss and the just deep presence and connection that lives on the other side of that. It's two sides of the same coin. So we get to choose to release suffering, but suffering and pain are two very different things. Pain is actually one of the most important, worthwhile, beautiful, powerful experiences that we can feel as human beings. And when you're trying to run away from that, you're choosing suffering, and suffering is a million times worse than pain, because pain is, it's like, it's quick, it's temporary. Suffering is like you're literally just numbing your whole body and your whole soul, and you don't even know who you are.
Yep. And pain is a catalyst. It's meant to split us open and open us up so that we can create with it. Like,
Yeah.
it literally is a catalyst, and we spend so much time avoiding it and pushing away or attaching on to our pain story, which just perpetuates suffering. And then we just stay in this loop of suffering.
Yeah.
And it's like Rachel keeps saying, it's not always easy, especially initially, because you're going to have to undo all of the ways that you thought were you, right? And the reason I just want to say this, that Rachel and I wanted to do this, is that we've just seen a lot of it lately with people attaching onto symptoms and really being like, well, I have this and so this. And it's like, well, okay, that is just the way that your nervous system created safety. So
Mhm.
how do we work with that to help you shift that? Because guess what? Your brain is neuroplastic. You can change your brain. You
Mhm.
have to have a discipline to do that. And we live in a world where people are just going to validate your shit. You know what I do? When Rachel first started working with me, she was like, wait, these things aren't normal. I was like, you know,
Like, wait, we don't have to feel anxious and like wake up with our heart pounding out of our chest every morning? Oh, wow. I literally had no idea. And I was a trained therapist. That's what's mind boggling about all of this.
and so who you attune to matters. And there are so few people truly that are attuned to this level of freedom and connection and expansion and spiritual acceptance, right? It's like the full acceptance. Like, where I meet you where you are. Rachel meets you where you are. Like, where are you? Okay, this is where you are. You're in a fucking gutter and can't get out of it. Okay, so what can we do right now to help you create safety, to make small movements to something new? And also, first, can you come into acceptance of where you are in this moment? Because without acceptance, you're constantly creating resistance.
Yeah.
Constantly creating resistance. It has to be a full surrender and a full acceptance to where you are in this moment, and then a trust to, I know this is temporary, and it is a catalyst to get me to where I know that I'm meant to go.
Right. People think acceptance means you're like settling for that thing for life. You're like, oh, I'm just accepting this. And that's quite the opposite. It's, oh, I'm accepting that I'm experiencing some fear right now. I'm accepting the fact that, like when Yara told me about BPD, oh, I'm accepting the fact that these things are showing up for me. And that acceptance always comes before change. We try and skip the acceptance, go straight to the change. It doesn't work. And then we go in circles and we bang our heads against the wall, and then we're like, this doesn't work. Let's go on to the next thing. And then you hop around and hop around and hop around because you're looking for the quick fix. And it's all just an avoidance of you. And it's all an avoidance of actually just surrendering to having all parts of you be seen and held. I just had a group member say, well, I don't know if I should share all this in the group. And I was like, that's literally the whole point of group healing, is to be able to be seen in all the parts that you want to run away from, because that perpetuates the sense of fragmentation of I present one way to the world and feel differently internally versus I am safe to actually have all parts of me be seen and held and accepted and loved. And that doesn't mean that we're accepting behaviors, right? That's very different. It's like when we talk about loving all parts of you, it's loving the part of you that is feeling terrified, most likely that younger inner child part, that's then creating that behavior. The behavior we can shift, but we first have to accept why you're even doing the behavior to begin with. And that applies to any of the protectors like control, perfectionism, people pleasing, or any of the addictive behaviors. It's like everything is there for a reason, but it doesn't have to stay there. And that's the whole point.
And we can apply that to symptoms, right? So if we're talking about, it's like, yes, the protectors, but the symptoms are a protector.
Mhm.
And it's that acceptance of, and this is really important. So I want you guys to really hear this. It's the acceptance of where you're at, why you're doing the behavior, and then not validating the behavior. Like you
Mhm.
actually have to say to yourself, oh no, this behavior is not okay.
No,
Like the amount of times Rachel has and I have been through, like, I'm like, Rachel, this behavior is not okay. Like, it's
no.
not acceptable.
And then I would be like, but it's because I was feeling this way. And you're like, yeah, that's fine, but the behavior is not okay.
Yeah, like I can hold you in the feeling and the fear and the deep fear, but like acting out like that is not acceptable.
Mhm.
And most therapists or healers or mentors would have just validated her to get her to feel calm again. And then she'd continue looping around in circles and doing the same thing and never actually shifting the behavior. It was me being able to hold her and be like, I'm here with you in the pain and fear and the sadness and like the clutching that's happening for you. I am not okay with the behavior and it
Mhm.
has to shift. And
Yeah.
then she had to be with the shame that
Mhm.
came with not being able to shift the behavior
Oh,
until she was with the shame and the pain enough to like feel safe enough. And I'm closing my eyes because I know this has to be an in body thing, like to feel safe enough to actually not act out in those ways.
yeah. And the shame literally will feel like you're dying at times. Like it's going to feel so overwhelming because again, we have internalized so much of this stuff and attached our identities onto these things. And so when we're engaging in those behaviors, it's really hard to then separate ourselves from it and say, oh, that's not actually who I am, because we're the ones engaging in it. So it feels very enmeshed and like tangled. And then when you really start to look at, that's the way that my nervous system is known safety, that's not actually who I am. And so I can hold who I actually am and the scared part of me that's scared to release it, and like almost externalize behavior where we can look at it and then shift it. And it is going to require you to be with the shame of how you've engaged in it multiple times, for me, many, many, many times, and then be like, okay, why am I continuing to do this? And really getting honest and then choosing a new way. And that's how we show our nervous systems a new way of safety. But it does take that honesty and having someone to be like, that's not okay. And I literally had been to 10 therapists in my life. Not one of them have ever told me that is not okay. The way you're treating your boyfriend, the way that you're projecting all over him, the way you're projectile vomiting your projection, like that is not okay. Never ever had anyone tell me that. Hence why it didn't change. It never changed until I had someone be like, that is not okay.
You know, then she meets me and I'm like, excuse me, you did what? No, no, just hard no. We don't act like that.
No, and that's what led to the mirror list of like old ways of safety. Do not do these, go to these. And I literally would like write out a roadmap and it worked.
My favorite is you putting me telling you to put on your mirror, stop doing dumb shit.
I know. I meant when I was doing my San Diego recap post, I meant to take a picture of that one because I was like, that really sums it up, don't do dumb shit. And then in part of learning to trust myself when I was doing this move and Yara was on vacation, so I couldn't have her as my mirror, I just kept looking at that note. I was like, okay, don't do dumb shit. This must be dumb shit. And it turns out it wasn't. It was actually my intuition, but I was convinced. I was like, you're just doing dumb shit. And so learning how to feel the difference is like just everything, literally everything.
And it's really important to note that, like, before you can come into acceptance, if someone says to you, stop doing dumb shit, you're going to get activated, you're going to get,
Defensive.
offended, you're going
Yeah.
to get triggered, you're going to want to project all over them instead of just being like, yeah, I'm doing dumb shit. Like, being able to laugh at yourself, I'm doing
Yeah.
dumb shit.
And it
And I need
literally
to
took
stop.
us, yeah, it took us 3 years for me to get to a place where I wasn't defensive. I was literally just like, oh shit, I was doing dumb shit. Like, why am I downloading Hinge? Why am I? Because I was self-sabotaging because I was actually expanding and my body's like, whoa, what is this new land?
Yeah, and so you guys have to know you're gonna want to project onto the person who's pointing this stuff out. You're gonna want to judge them or criticize them, or the amount of it. And one of two things will happen: you'll either keep leaning in and allow yourself to hear the hard things and do the hard things, or you'll get triggered and you'll run away, or you'll never even start. Those are
Yeah.
the three things that'll happen.
Yeah.
And I promise you, on the other side is freedom. I
Hmm.
promise you, it won't be an easy journey. But if you keep leaning in, it will set you free. And the people who get triggered by it, who do project, they just don't want to look at it fully. And I
Right.
can say that with certainty, like certainty. I've literally done all the things. Like,
Yeah.
my trial by fire is your gold. I can
Hmm.
show you the way if you're willing to go there. It won't be easy. You will have to take full responsibility for the way you are showing up in your life. And no
Yeah.
one likes to hear that. We all want something else to be the excuse, which is why we attach onto symptoms. Oh, it's that thing. My brain is just developed that way. Sure, I believe you have more power than that.
Hmm.
White matter is in your brain is malleable. You
Hmm.
can change it. If
Yeah.
you decide not to change it, that's up to you.
And the theme that we've been noticing is that people think it sounds like too good to be true. And that's why I always say it doesn't mean it's easy, right? It's like you're going to put in work to rewire an entire nervous system. That's not easy, but it's worth it. And people seem to think, like, I literally had a client stop this work because she said, it just seems too simple that it's all about safety. And I'm like, but it is all about safety. Like, and she's like, but that just seems like too simple. And I'm like, well, that's because you literally live in a world where we are overcomplicating and intellectualizing everything because that keeps us disconnected from our bodies, from our truth, from our intuition. And so it does get to be simple. Simple does not mean easy, it means simple. And so we can stop overcomplicating and going to a million different people to search for the answer. And I will caveat that and say, when Yarrow told me about my BPD symptoms, it was helpful to have a framework, partially because I had been through it with my mom, so I had an understanding, and also because I am a therapist, so I can understand it in that context as well. But when you're using a framework to heal symptoms, the end goal is to use it to heal the symptoms, not use it to get sucked in and then use it as an excuse of, well, I did this because I have these symptoms. It's like, the framework was really helpful in me understanding my experience of why I would experience certain things, and then being able to work within that framework to shift it. Like, that's the whole point. And that was not available to me in any other modality that I had experienced. So it's fine to want to have a framework if you're going to use it to your benefit rather than as an excuse or as a way to get attached or sucked into it, because then that's not actually helpful and you're just keeping yourself stuck.
Yeah, and you're trying to validate behaviors, which are symptoms, instead of starting where you are, accepting those behaviors and those symptoms, and then doing the work to shift them. So, like,
Right.
let's take someone with ADHD. Like, meditating is hard, right? So, start with breath work, start with chanting, do 30 seconds every
Mhm.
single day until your nervous system feels safe for 30 seconds, and then bring it to a minute, and then a minute and a half, and then 2 minutes. Like, you have to start where you are, and everything is possible, and you can heal everything.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to accept where you are and to actually release the attachment to being sick and to avoiding your body. Like Rachel said, people are so disembodied. Your doctor is disembodied, your therapist is disembodied, your psychiatrist is disembodied. I hate to share it to tell you this, your yoga teacher is probably pretty disembodied. We don't know it. We don't know the other way of being until we know it. And it's like so simple and so profound. And it literally comes back to, how safe do I feel to be in my body, and to release attachment to the symptoms, the beliefs, the narratives, the perceptions, and the concept of self that has kept me safe, so that I can create new ways of safety so I can be set free.
Yes. Amen. Yeah. And it's really looking at where are you valuing the opinion of that therapist, that doctor, that yoga teacher, the whoever is guiding you more than what feels resonant in your body. And yes, like we talked about, building that self-trust and that connection to your intuition is a process, but it's also looking at if someone gives you a diagnosis, like how does that land in your body? Like, does that actually feel resonant? Because we were also talking about how like misdiagnosed people are all the damn time. It's like, oh, you have ADHD, but you have bipolar, but you like a client came to me and was talking about one of her loved ones having the diagnosis of bipolar. And I was like, that's not bipolar. That's actually borderline personality disorder. Like, but again, the point isn't to figure out the right name. It's like whatever you want to call it, the root is the same. The root is trauma. The root is a dysregulated nervous system. The root is lack of safety in your body. And so, whatever you want to call it, again, if you want to use it as a framework, but it's important to really focus on the root rather than getting caught up in the name of it, right? Because it doesn't actually matter at the end of the day.
It can be helpful, like Rachel said, and it's an avoidance of self, and it's also an avoidance of the truth of what you need to do to shift your life. And if you feel trapped in your life, you're gonna go to a diagnosis because it's an avoidance of looking at why you feel trapped in your life,
Yeah.
right? Which might be because you feel trapped within your most intimate relationships, which then triggers your deep fear of loss and abandonment. And so it's easier to hold on to a diagnosis. Like these are all very complicated and nuanced things, which unfortunately we're going to have to wrap up. We could talk
Yeah.
forever. I'm like,
Yeah.
very quickly. um, they're all complicated and nuanced things, but the bottom line comes into why are you attaching to symptoms and a diagnosis rather than feeling like you can actually shift it?
Mm-hmm.
How safe do you feel in your body to shift it? And do you have people around you who you can trust to guide you back to you,
Yeah.
who have done this depth of work to be a clear channel, to be able to guide you back to you, which clear channel does not mean perfect. Clear channel means the ability to discern your energy from their energy, to discern when they're projecting, when you're projecting, and to get radically honest with themselves within the relationship. It's not a perfect thing. It's about
Yeah.
how clear is the channel.
Right. And a beautiful way to start to discern that is like, how do you feel in their energetic vibration? Are they saying that they know all these things, but their energy is very frenetic and anxious, and you feel anxious just even being in their energy? Or do you feel like that sense of holding that calm, grounded nervous system that can make you feel safe to surrender? Because the surrendering part is not easy because of the vicious cycle of our attachment wounding, right? The attachment wounding makes it so that it's difficult to trust ourselves, and then because we don't trust ourselves, we don't trust other people. And so it is a little bit of this leap where even with my relationship with Yarrow, like it didn't always feel safe to like, well, I'm just going to trust like I would fight her on things and I would be like, are you sure that's not your stuff and my stuff, da, 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 because I didn't have that trust. But then eventually I was like, okay, like fighting her is not actually helpful. And so I'm just going to take a leap of faith and go all in on our relationship, which allowed me to go all in on the relationship with myself. And it literally healed my anxious attachment and my BPD symptoms and my sickness. I don't get sick anymore. Like, and if I start to feel sick, I'm like, oh, it's because I need to go to sleep. It's not like I need attention. So the point is when you're surrendering to this relational healing, it can feel scary because of the attachment wounding from childhood. But when you decide, I'm going to allow this to be a reparative experience, and you go all in and you're not half-assing it and like going to this person and this person and blah, 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 like you're fully committed and using that as a mirror you can fully transform. And it's like the most mind-blowing experience of your life. Like one relationship can literally change your entire life. Just what?
Because when we're working with it in this way, it is a relationship that's guiding you back to you.
Mhm.
And so whenever you were fighting with me, it was just you
Me
fighting with
fighting
you.
me. Yeah.
And it's not gonna feel like when Rachel was talking about like how do you feel in someone's energy because of our trauma and dysregulation. Oh, I'm gonna have to jump off.
Yeah.
Because of our trauma and dysregulation, being in the presence of a full present attunement who sees you might not feel safe. It
Mhm.
actually might feel really scary.
Yep.
But
You're gonna want to run.
you have to be able to attune to, does this feel scary? Like, oh my gosh, this is going to change me, or does this feel scary, like, oh, this person's energy is weird? Like, which
Mhm.
is it? You
Yeah.
have to be able to discern between the two, because being fully seen, like when someone looks in your eyes and sees you and is like there with you, it initially won't feel safe because it hasn't been safe for us. And that is why we start reaching for symptoms and diagnoses and all of the things. So
Yeah.
I do have to jump off. Rachel, do you want
Yes.
to kind of close it out? I'm sorry, I
No,
have
no,
to
no,
leave.
that's okay. Yeah, I'll summarize, and I think that all sounds great. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited for more of these.
Thank you. Me too. It was really
Yay.
beautiful. All
It
right. I love
was.
you all. If you want to reach out to me in any ways to do this, DNA Rewired would be the way. 90-day group healing program starts the 24th of October. You can find all the links in my bio or reach out. All right. I love
Yeah.
you. I love you,
Love
Rachel.
you. Bye. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. So to summarize, I'm going to summarize in just like a few main points. Noticing where you are attaching on to symptoms and diagnoses. What does attaching on to these give you in terms of how it helps you feel safe? Who are you afraid of losing if you actually detach from those symptoms and diagnoses? And where are you not fully in acceptance that you actually can heal and shift and change these symptoms, and that that's not actually you? And if you need support, I am literally about to film in an hour my second module, Triggers to Truth, of my program Authenticity Unleash. It's not too late to join. 222, you could do a payment plan. You get 5 modules all about discerning between your trauma, your attachment wounding, and how to connect and get to know and uncover who your authentic self is underneath all those symptoms, underneath all of the diagnoses, the labels, the attachments. So this is one of my lowest cost ways to jump into this work. You get a private Facebook community, you get weekly integration, homework, journal prompts, all the things. And we also have my membership Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. That's $111 per month. You get 3 live trainings per month, a private Facebook group community for support, co-regulation, accountability, so you don't have to feel alone in your healing journey, and a monthly Zoom Connect call / Q&A. And I have one one-on-one spot open that I just opened yesterday for an individual who is all in on this depth of healing. So maybe you've been in therapy your whole life, like I was. Maybe you've tried medication. Maybe you've done ayahuasca. Maybe you've done all the healing things. And you're like, I am just sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is the deepest layer of healing that you will find. Trust me, Yarrow and I have tried all the things, like literally all of them. This is the only thing that actually guided us home to ourselves. Yarrow was her original client, and then I was the first client that she trained in her method. You can just ask any of my clients. This is far different than anything. Like, it collapses time around your healing. So my one-on-one spots are for those that are ready to go all in, like not like all in of, I have these symptoms. I want to fully process the pain and the trauma underneath the symptoms, and I want to shift them and experience full nervous system rewiring and full spiritual transformation. So you can DM me or head to link in bio to apply. Mwah. I love you so, so much. Reach out with any questions. Let us know how this all lands for you. And I will see you on the next live. Mwah. Bye.